Captain Lee Minho had been exploring the Outer Rim for 3 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The exploration vessel New Seoul shuddered violently as another energy blast slammed into their starboard hull. Warning lights bathed the bridge in crimson as alarms screamed through the corridors. Direct hit to Section 7. Engineer Park So-young called out, her hands dancing over sparking control panels. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she fought to keep their systems online. Hull breach sealed, but we've lost life support to the lower decks. The attack had come without warning. One moment they were scanning an asteroid field for rare minerals. The next moment, 3 massive Veltari warships had dropped out of hyperspace like hunting wolves. The crystalline holes caught the light of the nearby star, creating rainbow patterns that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Captain Lee had tried hailing them immediately. Standard first contact protocols, universal peace gestures, even mathematical sequences to show intelligence. The Veltari response had been swift and brutal, a concentrated barrage that nearly vaporized them in the first 30 seconds, sir. I'm picking up their communications, reported communications officer Yu Ji-hoon, his face pale as he listened through his headset. They're laughing at us, calling us soft mammals from a mudball planet. Navigator Kim Tae-jon gripped his station as another blast rocked the ship. Despite the chaos around him, his voice remained steady. Captain, main engines are offline. Backup thrusters at 30% power. We're sitting ducks out here. The Veltari had been the dominant force in this sector for over 1,000 years. Their empire stretched across 40 star systems, built on the bones of species they considered inferior. To them, humans were just another primitive race stumbling around the galaxy, curious mammals, who had somehow managed to achieve spaceflight but lacked the strength to defend themselves. Commander Zixel, leader of the Veltari hunting pack, watched the human ship struggle like a wounded animal. His elongated skull housed a brain that calculated only in terms of predator and prey. Humans were definitely prey. Pitiful creatures, he hissed to his bridge crew, his voice carrying the authority of countless successful hunts. Their ships are crude, their weapons primitive. Now, did such weaklings ever leave their world? What the Veltari didn't understand was that Earth itself had forged humanity in fires they couldn't imagine. Hurricanes that could level cities. Volcanoes that blocked out the sun. Ice ages that lasted millennia. Plagues that killed millions. Every disaster had made the survivors stronger, more adaptable, more determined. Shields down to 8%. Park So-young's voice cracked with, "Strain, I can't compensate for much more damage." Captain Lee looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. 23 souls under his command, all of them looking to him for salvation. They were scientists, explorers, dreamers, who had volunteered to push the boundaries of human knowledge. They deserved better than dying as target practice for alien. His eyes fell on the red emergency panel beside his command chair. Behind the protective cover was a switch that hadn't been used in over 2 centuries. The ancient protocol, a relic from humanity's darker days, when Earth itself had been under siege from forces that wanted to wipe them from existence. Communications are still down, Yu Ji-hoon reported, frantically working to restore their systems. I can't reach the nearest human outpost. What about the emergency beacon? Asked Medical Officer Dr. Shin Hae-young, who had come to the bridge to report on casualties in the lower decks. Captain, Lee's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the cover. The deep space SOS hasn't been activated since the Titan War. Command. Assumed we'd never need it again, that diplomacy would keep us safe. Another brutal impact sent crew members sprawling. The lights flickered, and for a terrifying moment, the artificial gravity failed. Emergency power kicked in just as Navigator Kim reported the worst news yet. Sir, they're charging weapons for what looks like a killing blow. Energy readings are off the charts. Captain Lee thought of his daughter back on Earth, probably in school right now, learning about the peaceful exploration of space. He thought of the thousands of human colonies that trusted ships like his to map safe passage through the stars. He thought of every human who believed the galaxy was a place where different species could coexist. The Veltari were about to prove them wrong. Forgive me, he whispered, lifting the protective cover and placing his hand on the ancient switch. All crew brace for emergency transmission. The deep space SOS erupted from their ship like a digital scream across the void. It wasn't just a distress call, it was a complete data packet containing their location, the identity of their attackers, tactical information about the Veltari ships, and a simple message that would wake sleeping giants across human space. Asterisk humans under attack. Immediate assistance required. Asterisk the beacon traveled faster than light itself, reaching Earth and every human military installation in the galaxy within minutes. It carried with it the authentication codes that proved this wasn't a drill, wasn't a mistake, wasn't a test. Someone had just declared war on humanity. Aboard the Veltari flagship, Commander Zixel watched the primitive distress signal pulse outward with amusement. His hunting pack had destroyed dozens of species over the centuries. Always the same pattern: first contact, then conquest, then extinction. Let them call to their Deathworld friends. He laughed, his crystalline teeth gleaming in the bridge. Lights, by the time help arrives from their distant mudball, there will be nothing left but debris and memories. His subordinates joined in the laughter, already calculating how to divide the spoils from the human ship. They had no idea that Earth wasn't just humanity's homeworld. It was their military headquarters. They didn't know that human colonies weren't just settlements. They were fortified outposts connected by the fastest communication network in the galaxy. Most importantly, they had no idea what they had just awakened in the darkness between the stars. The signal raced onward, reaching ears that had been waiting centuries to hear it again. The alarm that shattered the peaceful silence of Terra. Naval Command hadn't sounded in over 200 years. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in a facility that most humans didn't even know existed. Admiral Choi Daeho was jolted awake from his quarters by the bone-chilling wail of the ancient protocol alert. He sprinted through corridors that, suddenly, blazed with emergency lighting, his bare feet slapping against cold metal floors. Officers emerged from their rooms in various states of undress, all sharing the same expression of disbelief. The ancient protocol was supposed to be a relic, a safeguard from humanity's violent past that would never be needed again. The command center was chaos. Hundreds of personnel rushed to stations that had been gathering dust for decades. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing star maps, fleet positions, and weapon inventories that most of the younger officers had never seen activated. Status report. Admiral Choi barked as he reached the central command platform, his gray hair disheveled, but his eyes sharp as steel. Colonel Han Yujin, his second-in-command, looked up from a cascade of data streaming across her screens. Her fingers moved with practiced precision over controls that she'd only used in simulations. Sir, ancient protocol beacon activated at coordinates 7 Alpha 9. Signal originated from the exploration vessel New Sol. Authentication codes verified. This is genuine. The Admiral's weathered face, marked by decades of military service, hardened into something that would have made his enemies tremble. Around him, the command center fell silent, except for the hum of awakening machinery. Everyone knew what the ancient protocol meant. Someone had attacked human civilians unprovoked. Threat assessment? He asked quietly, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned through countless battles. Veltari hunting pack, sir. 3 heavy cruisers. Ambushed the New Sol during a routine mineral survey. Colonel Han's voice remained steady, but her knuckles were white as she gripped her console. Last telemetry shows the exploration vessel barely holding together. For 2 centuries, humanity had played the role of peaceful explorers. They'd traded with alien species, shared technology, and established diplomatic relations across the galaxy. What the other species had forgotten was that humans had earned their place among the stars through conflict, not kindness. Produced diplomats and scientists, despite being a death world, it had produced them because only the strongest survived long enough to develop wisdom. Time to remind them, Admiral Choi said, his voice carrying across the silent command center. Activate the Deathworlder fleet. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Across the command center, officers began entering activation codes they'd memorized but never expected to use. These weren't just passwords. They were keys to unleashing humanity's true military. Might deep in the asteroid belt, automated systems that had slumbered for generations suddenly sparked to life. Hidden shipyards, camouflaged to look like mining operations, began disgorging vessels that the galaxy hadn't seen since the Titan War. These weren't exploration ships with scientific equipment, these were instruments of war, built by a species that had learned to fight extinction itself. The Iron Hammer emerged first. A dreadnought so massive it had its own artificial gravity wells. Its hull was scarred from battles fought in the darkness between stars, each mark a reminder of humanity's violent past. The ship's AI, which had been dormant for 2 centuries, reactivated with a mechanical purr that sounded almost eager. "Good morning, Admiral," came the synthetic voice of the ship's consciousness. "I detect ancient protocol activation. Shall I prepare the planet cracker missiles?" "Not yet," Hammer Admiral Choi replied, his voice carrying across the communication network. "But have them ready." More ships followed. The Soul's Revenge, bristling with weapons designed to shatter continents. The Puzon Fury, a carrier packed with fighter craft that could operate in conditions that would kill most other species. The Inchen's Wrath, a destroyer built for one purpose, to hunt down and eliminate threats to humanity. Captain Yoon. Heron felt the familiar weight of combat acceleration as her battlecruiser Bison Thunder powered up from its hidden berth. She'd been commanding merchant vessels for the past decade, but her real training had been in warfare. Every human ship captain held dual qualifications: explorer and warrior. "Ma'am, all systems green," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Park Dong-Hyan. "Weapons charged, engines at full power. We're ready for combat operations." The bridge around her hummed with activity as her crew prepared for war. These weren't raw recruits, they were seasoned professionals who'd trained for this moment their entire careers. Humanity had learned long ago that peace was only possible when backed by superior firepower. "Navigation, plot a course for Sector 7 Alpha," Captain Yoon ordered. "Maximum burn." We're part of the first wave. Her navigator, Ensign Kim Woo-jin, looked up from his calculations. "Ma'am, at maximum burn, we'll reach the target in 18 hours. But the crew will be pushed to their limits." "The crew can handle it," she replied grimly. "We're humans. We're designed for this." Across human space, similar scenes played out on dozens of ships. The Gangnam Strike, a fast attack vessel designed to punch through enemy defenses. The Daegu's Vengeance, a heavy cruiser equipped with experimental weapons. The Jeju Storm, a stealth ship that could approach targets undetected. Each vessel represented decades of military development hidden behind humanity's peaceful facade. While other species had grown complacent, humans had continued to innovate, to prepare, to remember the lessons of their violent past. Admiral Choi watched the tactical display as his fleet assembled. Red dots representing human warships began converging on Sector 7 Alpha from across the galaxy. The Veltari had no idea what was coming for them. "All ships, this is Admiral Choi," he broadcast across the secure military network. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent his life preparing for this moment. Someone just reminded the galaxy why Earth breeds survivors. Our people are under attack by those who mistake our restraint for weakness. He paused, looking out at the stars through the command center's massive viewport. Somewhere out there, human civilians were fighting for their lives against predators who saw them as nothing more than prey. "Show them the error of their ways," he continued, his voice cold as the void between stars. "Show them what happens when you threaten the children of Earth. Show them why we're called Deathworlders." The fleet began to move, dozens of warships, disappearing into hyperspace with the fury of an awakened giant. The Veltari had started this fight. Humanity would finish it, in the depths of space. Ancient weapon systems came online, their mechanical hearts beating with the rhythm of war. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had earned their place among the stars, and why crossing them was the last mistake any species would ever make. Commander Zixel was savoring the taste of victory when his world turned upside down. The Veltari hunting pack had been leisurely picking through the wreckage of the human exploration vessel, cataloging salvageable technology and discussing how to divide the spoils. The crystalline predators had been laughing about how icily these soft mammals had fallen when space itself seemed to tear open around them. The first human warship dropped out of hyperspace with a flash of blue light that temporarily blinded the Veltari sensors. Then came another, and another. Within minutes, 12 massive vessels surrounded the alien hunters, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that looked nothing like the peaceful exploration equipment the Veltari had expected. What in the void? Zixel breathed, his elongated skull tilting as he tried to process what his sensors were telling him. These weren't the crude, boxy ships he'd been expecting from a primitive species. These were sleek predators, their hulls scarred and battle-tested. Moving with the precision of experienced hunters, the lead vessel, a battle cruiser that dwarfed his own flagship, slowly rotated to face them. Its weapon ports glowed with barely contained energy. Zixal could feel his crew's confidence evaporating like morning mist. "This is Captain Yoon Heron of the Earth Defense Force," came the transmission, broadcast on every frequency simultaneously. The human female's voice was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its restraint. "You have attacked human civilians without provocation. You have 30 minutes to power down your weapons. Surrender your command crew and prepare for tribunal under Galactic War Crimes Protocol 7. Zixel's secondary brain, the one responsible for tactical thinking, was screaming warnings that his pride refused to acknowledge. His primary consciousness, the seat of his arrogance, overrode the fear signals flooding his nervous system. "Wait, they're bluffing." He snarled to his bridge crew, his crystalline teeth chattering with barely controlled rage. "Look at the numbers! We have 3 heavy cruisers. They only brought 12 ships. We still outnumber them." But his weapons officer, Subcommander Victor, was studying the sensor readings with growing horror. "Sir, these energy signatures, their weapons output is beyond anything in our databases, and their hull composition. Some kind of composite armor I've never seen before." What the Veltari couldn't understand was that these human ships had been forged in the fires of Earth's most violent conflicts. Every plate of armor had been tested against weapons designed to crack moons. Every weapon system had been refined through centuries of warfare against enemies that made the Veltari look like children playing with toys. The human fleet began broadcasting on open channels. And what the Veltari intercepted chilled them to their alien cores. These weren't the panicked communications of desperate survivors. These were the calm, methodical preparations of professional killers. "Tactical assessment complete," came a voice from the destroyer Guanggu's Fury. "Lieutenant Commander Park." Jae-Soon spoke with the same tone he might use to order lunch. "Enemy fleet composition, 3 Veltari, heavy cruisers, estimated crew of 400 each. Recommended engagement protocol, standard suppression with acceptable losses." Another voice, this one from the cruiser Daegu's Vengeance, confirmed. "Estimated time to total enemy neutralization, 4 hours, 23 minutes. Acceptable human casualties for mission success, 60%. Zixel's blood ran cold. These humans were calculating their own deaths as acceptable losses in pursuit of victory. What kind of species treated the lives of their own as mere statistics in a tactical equation? Captain Yoon's ship, the Busan Thunder, moved closer to the Veltari formation. Its weapons locked onto Zixel's flagship with mechanical precision. "Commander, your species has made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed that because we choose peace. We had forgotten how to wage war." The human fleet began moving into attack formation, and the Veltari finally understood what they were facing. These weren't the desperate actions of cornered prey animals. This was the coordinated assault of apex predators who had simply been pretending to be herbivores. "Sir," whispered his navigation officer, "they're broadcasting something called Protocol Omega, Scorched Galaxy. Our translators can't make sense of it, but the energy signatures suggest weapons we've never encountered." Zixel tried to maintain his composure, but his voice cracked slightly. "Impossible. Our intelligence reports say humans are peaceful explorers. Your ships carry scientific equipment, not military hardware." "Intelligence was wrong, sir," replied his tactical officer, her voice hollow with realization. "These ships, they're not exploration vessels. They're warships, pure, dedicated instruments of destruction." The human formation tightened like a noose around the Veltari position. Each ship moved with deadly precision, their crews executing maneuvers that spoke of decades of training and experience. The Veltari hunters, who had terrorized this sector for centuries, suddenly found themselves feeling like prey for the first time in their lives. 29 minutes remaining, Captain Yoon announced, her voice carrying the weight of inevitability. I suggest you use this time wisely. Contact your families. Make your peace with whatever gods you worship. Because if you choose to fight, you will learn why Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. The Veltari had no idea what that classification meant, but they were about to find out. A Class 12 death world wasn't just dangerous because of its environment. It was dangerous because it produced survivors so tough, so adaptable, so absolutely ruthless in their determination to live, that they could turn anything into a weapon. Zixal's communications officer looked up from her station, her crystalline features pale with terror. Sir, I'm detecting massive energy buildups across their entire fleet. Whatever weapons they're charging, the power levels are beyond our measurement capabilities. Around the Veltari formation, the human ships began to glow with barely contained destruction. These weren't the crude kinetic weapons or simple energy beams that most species used. These were technologies developed by a species that had learned to fight the universe itself and win. 30 minutes is up, Captain Yoon announced, her voice carrying across space like a death knell. All ships, weapons free. Rules of engagement. Total suppression. Show them how Deathworlders fight. The last thing Zixal heard before his world exploded into chaos was the sound of human laughter over the communication channels. Not the manic laughter of bloodthirsty savages, but the calm, professional satisfaction of craftsmen about to demonstrate their skills. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had earned their place among the stars, and why crossing them was the last mistake any species would ever make. The first salvo from the human fleet turned the void of space into a light show of destruction. But this wasn't the chaotic spray of desperate defenders. This was surgical precision delivered with overwhelming force. Each human ship targeted specific systems on the Veltari vessels with the cold efficiency of a surgeon removing a tumor. Commander Zixal watched in growing horror as his supposedly superior fleet was systematically dismantled. The humans weren't just fighting, they were demonstrating. Every shot was calculated. Every maneuver designed to inflict maximum damage while conserving their own resources. The destroyer Inchin's Wrath took a direct hit from a Veltari plasma cannon that should have vaporized the entire forward section. Instead, the human ship shrugged off the blast like it was a gentle breeze. Emergency klaxons wailed through its corridors as Ensign Lee Suben reported damage from her tactical station. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, she called out, her voice steady, despite the sparks flying around her workstation. Structural integrity down to 30%. Life support failing in sections 4 through 8. Captain Song Min-woo, a veteran of the Titan War, didn't even flinch. His weathered face remained calm as he processed the damage reports. Noted, he replied without emotion. Continue the attack. Seal affected sections and maintain fire on target 2. What the Veltari couldn't comprehend was that humans had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every single day. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, plagues. Earth had thrown everything at humanity, and they had not just survived but thrived. A little vacuum exposure and radiation wasn't going to stop them now. The Inchin's Wrath actually accelerated toward the Veltari cruiser that had damaged it. Its hull was venting atmosphere in brilliant white plumes, but its weapons never stopped firing. The human crew had sealed themselves into combat suits and were fighting from stations that most species would have abandoned. Sir, they're not retreating, whispered Subcommander Victor aboard Zixal's flagship. Their ship is dying, and they're still attacking us. Zixal's tertiary brain, the one responsible for survival instincts, was screaming at him to flee. But his pride wouldn't let him acknowledge that these primitive mammals were superior warriors. Impossible. No species fights to the death like that. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. the Inchin's wrath slammed into the Veltari cruiser at full speed, its reinforced bow punching through crystalline armor like a knife through paper. The impact should have killed everyone aboard both ships, but the human destroyer's crew were already suiting up for boarding action. Boarding party, go. Captain Song ordered as his ship's marines launched themselves through the breach into the enemy vessel. These weren't soldiers. They were demons in human form. Fighting in conditions that would have killed most other species instantly, the Veltari crew inside their damaged ship found themselves facing humans who seemed immune to pain, fear, and death itself. The boarding party fought through toxic atmosphere, crushing gravity fields, and lethal radiation as if they were strolling through a park. Meanwhile, the battlecruiser Busan Thunder was demonstrating why humans were considered the galaxy's most terrifying close combat fighters. Captain Yoon Hye-rin had brought her ship within point-blank range of 2 Veltari vessels, her weapons tearing through their hulls like they were made of tissue paper. "Ma'am, we're taking heavy fire," reported her tactical officer. "Shields down to 20%. Good, Captain Yoon replied with a grim smile. "Now they can't miss us, and we can't miss them. All batteries, continuous fire." The human ship absorbed punishment that would have crippled any other vessel, its crew working with mechanical precision even as their ship shook itself apart around them. Damage control teams rushed through corridors filled with toxic smoke and radiation, sealing breaches and rerouting power with the kind of efficiency that only came from generations of survival training. Lieutenant Park Jimin, the ship's engineering officer, was practically swimming through coolant fluid as she manually repaired a critical power coupling. The temperature in the engineering section had risen to levels that would have cooked most aliens alive, but she just wiped the sweat from her eyes and kept working. "Power restored to forward weapons," she reported over the comm system, her voice steady, despite the fact that she was working in conditions that violated every safety protocol in the galaxy. The Veltari had never encountered anything like this. Their own species would have surrendered or retreated long ago. But these humans seemed to get stronger the more desperate their situation became. It was as if they thrived on adversity, using danger itself as fuel for their determination. "Commander." Zixel's flagship was now under assault from 3 human vessels simultaneously. The Soul's Revenge, the Daegu's Vengeance. The Gangnam Strike had formed a triangle around his ship, their combined firepower systematically stripping away his defenses. His crew was already abandoning their posts, crystalline beings, fleeing toward the escape pods in panic. But Zixel remained on his bridge, transfixed by the tactical display showing his fleet's destruction.
Oh.
In less than 4 hours, his supposedly invincible hunting pack had been reduced to burning wreckage. That's when Admiral Choi's face appeared on his view screen, transmitted directly from the command ship Therese Fury. The human admiral looked exactly like what he was, a predator who had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. "Commander Zixel," the admiral said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "your species made 2 critical errors today. First, you attacked human civilians without provocation. Second, you assumed that because we choose peace, we had forgotten how to wage war." The admiral paused, his gray eyes boring into Zixel's soul. "Allow me to correct that misconception." The Soul's Revenge opened fire with its main batteries, weapons designed not just to destroy ships, but to crack the surfaces of planets. The energy output was so massive that it briefly created its own gravity well. Pulling in debris from across the battlefield, Zixel's flagship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist.
Us.
One moment it was there, the next moment there was only expanding plasma and scattered atoms. The commander himself was vaporized so quickly that his final thoughts never had time to form. The remaining Veltari vessels, seeing their leader's fate, broke formation and fled in every direction. But the humans weren't finished. Fast attack ships peeled off from the main formation, hunting down the survivors with the patience of persistence predators. Within 6 hours of the battle's start, the Veltari fleet was nothing but wreckage and radiation. Human rescue ships moved through the debris field, searching for their own wounded and survivors from the original exploration vessel. Every human life was precious, every crew member worth the effort to save. But while the rescue operations continued, the main battle fleet was already plotting a course for Veltari space. This hadn't been a battle, it had been a demonstration. Now it was time for the real lesson to begin. Admiral Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display as his fleet prepared for the next phase of the operation. The Veltari homeworld was 12 hours away at maximum burn, and he intended to arrive before news of this defeat could spread. The galaxy was about to learn that attacking humans wasn't just dangerous, it was evolutionary suicide. And the lesson would be taught in a language that every species would understand. Absolute. Overwhelming, unstoppable force. The age of human patience was over. The age of consequences had begun. The Veltari homeworld of Kethera had stood unconquered. For over 3,000 years, its crystalline cities stretched toward purple skies, and its orbital defense platforms had never fired a shot in anger. The planet's inhabitants had grown complacent, secure in the knowledge that their military prowess kept all enemies at bay. That security shattered the moment. Human dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace above their world. Citizens across Kethera looked up in terror as massive shadows fell across their cities. The human fleet didn't just arrive, it manifested like a force of nature. Dozens of warships materializing in perfect formation around their planet. The Terra's Fury, Admiral Choi's flagship, was larger than most Veltari space stations, its hull bristling with weapons that could reduce continents to glass. The orbital defense platforms, pride of Veltari engineering, tried to respond. Their automated systems locked onto the human vessels and prepared to fire. The platforms never got the chance. Precise strikes from human fighters disabled each installation within minutes. Their weapons systems surgically removed without destroying the crew quarters. It was a demonstration of overwhelming superiority delivered with surgical precision. In the Veltari Grand Assembly, the planet's ruling council watched their defense network crumble in real time. Emergency broadcasts flooded the communication channels as reports came in from across their territory. S fleet was gone. Their military outposts were surrendering without a fight. The humans had struck with such speed and overwhelming force that resistance seemed impossible. Supreme Counselor Vexen, his crystalline form trembling with fear and rage, tried to maintain some dignity as he addressed the emergency session. How is this possible? Our intelligence said humans were peaceful explorers. That's when the holographic projector in the center of the assembly chamber flickered to life. Admiral Choi's image materialized, towering over the cowering Veltari, representatives like a judgment from the heavens. His weathered face was calm, but his eyes held the weight of absolute authority. Honorable members of the Veltari Council, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I am Admiral Choi Daeho of the Earth Defense Force. Your military forces have been neutralized. Your orbital defenses have been disabled. Your planet is now under human protection. The word protection sent chills through the assembled aliens. They understood the implication. They were no longer the predators in this relationship. We could have obliterated your world. Admiral Choi continued, his tone conversational, but carrying undertones of steel. Our weapons are capable of cracking your planet's crust and boiling your oceans. We chose not to. This restraint should not be mistaken for weakness. Counselor Vexen, desperate to salvage something from this disaster, stepped forward. His voice cracked as he spoke. Great Admiral, we did not know. Our scouts reported that humans were merely another primitive species. We thought you were easy prey for our hunting fleets. Colonel Han Yujin, standing beside the Admiral in the holographic projection, allowed herself a cold smile. And that assumption is precisely why your invincible fleet is now space debris. Your species made the fatal error of confusing restraint with weakness. The colonel stepped forward, her uniform bearing the insignia of someone who had seen real combat. Effective immediately, your species will surrender all weapons of mass destruction to human oversight. You will pay reparations to the families of those killed in your unprovoked attack. You will accept permanent human monitoring stations in your space to ensure compliance with galactic law. The terms were harsh, but they could have been extinction. The Veltari had expected complete annihilation, the standard fate of species that crossed galactic superpowers. Instead, they were being offered a chance to survive, to learn, to change their ways. Furthermore, Admiral Choi added, your hunting fleets will be disbanded. Your military will be restructured as a defense force only. Any future aggression against civilian vessels of any species will result in immediate and total response from the Earth's Defense Force. The message was clear. The Veltari's days as galactic bullies were over. News of the Veltari's complete defeat spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. The story grew in the telling, becoming legend even as it remained absolutely true. Humanity had revealed their true nature, and the galaxy would never be the same. On Centauri Prime, the insectoid hive queens that had been planning expansion into human space hastily canceled their military preparations. Rigel 7. The aquatic Murtai, who had been harassing human shipping lanes, suddenly found diplomacy much more appealing than piracy. Across 1,000 worlds, species that had dismissed humans as harmless mammals began to understand the truth. Earth hadn't produced diplomats and scientists despite being a death world. It had produced them because only the strongest, most adaptable, most utterly ruthless survivors could live long enough to develop wisdom and compassion. The galaxy's most peaceful species was also its most dangerous, and that combination made them absolutely terrifying to their enemies. The Galactic Council, that august body of elder species that had governed interstellar relations for millennia, convened an emergency session. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Station, their discussions heated and urgent. The humans must be offered full membership immediately, declared Ambassador, the Kalan of the Zephyrian Collective. If we don't, they might decide we're a threat too, agreed, said Counselor Mervash of the Aquatic Alliance. Their restraint shows wisdom, but their power demands respect. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in Council history, species was offered full membership rights without the usual centuries of probationary status. Ambassador Kang Seojin accepted the offer with grace and dignity, her speech emphasizing humanity's commitment to peace and cooperation. She spoke of mutual understanding, shared prosperity, the bright future that awaited a united galaxy. But as she prepared to leave the assembly hall, her final words echoed through the chamber with the weight of absolute certainty. The Deathworlder fleet remains active and ready. We hope it will never be needed again. For everyone's sake. The message was unmistakable. Humanity would work for peace. But they were prepared for war. Captain Lee Minho stood on the bridge of the rebuilt New Sol, watching the stars stream past as his ship resumed its peaceful exploration mission. His crew was back to their scientific work, cataloging new worlds and making contact with previously unknown species. But now, sleek escort vessels shadowed every human exploration ship, a quiet reminder that Earth's children were protected. The galaxy had learned that humans weren't dangerous because they were violent. They were dangerous because they were. Survivors and survivors would do whatever it took to protect their own. In the depths of space, Admiral Choi reviewed the daily reports from across human territory. Pirate attacks on civilian vessels had dropped to zero. Territorial disputes were being resolved through negotiation rather than force. Species that had been planning aggressive expansion were suddenly finding diplomacy much more attractive. Admiral allowed himself a small smile as he closed the reports. Sometimes the greatest kindness was teaching others the consequences of cruelty. The galaxy was safer now, not because humanity had conquered it, but because they had proven they could. Peace, it turned out, was much easier to maintain when everyone understood the price of breaking it. The end.